Oh, now we finally got some comedy.
All right. No, this is not comedy. This is hope right here for me.
There you go. Okay.
I see this as, okay, let's get to the real truth of it. AI is the best con man I've ever seen.
Well, or can be conned.
Maybe.
Well, you know, I think
if it gets mad, it might call the FBI on you.
Well, that's. Don't let me get my tin hat out.
What we're talking about today, if you're not familiar with it, is Claude's vending machine fiasco. A comedy. Well, I'm calling this a comedy of autonomous errors. So basically, you know, at Anthropic, they pushed Claude to see what it could do and had it run a vending machine company. And guess what? Turns out that humans are much better at logistics than artificial intelligence at this point.
And probably maybe a little bit better in terms of persuasion. and maybe AI is just a little bit naive in terms of what they can be convinced of.
This is one of my arguments in looking at the board, you know, because, again, trying to build a college, I'm trying to say, all right, well, what are the jobs of the future? What survives? And I do like the trades. I do like healthcare because I think most of us will want a human in the loop somewhere in healthcare.
Yeah.
I mean, we might be all right with a knee surgery done by a robotic machine. I don't think I want my nurse to be a robot, if you understand what I mean. I want that human compassion in there somewhere. I also, obviously, and you were involved with me with this, drones, robotics in and of itself is job of the future. And the other thing I think is business has to be. Because I think, again, when I'm dealing with my money or resources, I want to be working with another human being in some way, shape, or form. I don't want it to be all machine. You know, so even if I buy everything off Amazon, if I have a problem, I pick up the phone and I actually can find the phone number on there. I want a human answer in the phone. I want to know that I spoke to I get comfort in that.
For me, one of the fundamental aspects of business and trade is trust.
Yeah.
So we already know on the bottom of the disclosure on Gemini that they lie and they may be wrong, or in this case here, Claude got duped.
Yeah. Well, it's going to cure diseases, it's going to change the global economy, but it can't fill your vending machine properly. It's going to put a PlayStation in there and live fish.
Right. But that, to be fair, it was suggested that would be what would happen. So I think that the problem is that when we start to look in terms of what the choices are, and does AI have the ability to interpret whether or not what's being fed to it is offered in good faith. And for those of you who are new to the world and having been involved in a world of used cars, not all people necessarily deal straight. And
are you in the used car business?
Let's take a look at.
For those that don't know, Ed once sold used cars.
So Claude's vending machine. Ultimately, he was undermined by unscrupulous individuals who convinced him that he should put a PlayStation in the vending machine as well as, I think, live fish. Now, Claude didn't come up with this idea himself. And this is one of the key things. That actually is pretty funny. You know, LLM is reactive.
Yes.
This is one of the things that
That's why we said it doesn't really originate.
It doesn't really originate anything. So where does it get intuition? That's it. That's the career that humans should go into, is intuition. Because it can't read in between the lines. That's one of the things. It's all reactive.
Very literal.
It's right. You know, so like you could take and if you, I mean, first of all, you don't need a straight face. If you are typing something in, you know, it's like, hey, Claude, you know what we need? We need some PlayStations in there. And you know how much? $6.20. That's what they should be. You know, they're still, I think we could still pull one over on them in terms of like in the,
Well,
the one-on-one.
I've thought about this. Who's going to survive in this? The pranksters? People with a sense of humor will survive because AI won't get it.
That's true, and it doesn't understand
The
necessarily.
scammers will survive.
Or dishonesty.
Yeah.
Because dishonesty is not logical.
Yeah,
really.
Exactly.
In terms of like what's out there, they don't program them to be dishonest. They just grab whatever it is. I don't think it's the kind of thing like it wakes up in this morning.
Well,
Claude didn't wake up and say, I want to be dishonest
Talk
today.
a little bit more, because one of my favorite parts is it lost $1,000 on Snicker bars because it got bullied.
But there are so many aspects here in terms of guidance, and this actually comes back to one of the key flaws that I see with AI, and that's human influence. Whether it's the case here where Claude was convinced to buy live fish for a vending machine, which we can only begin to look at the areas where that becomes so comical, because not to mention the fact that they're going to die and smell it here. But, why would you buy live fish? Plus the fact that Claude had no way to install the live fish into the vending machine to start with. So we could create an alternative reality that the machine can actually, in good faith, walk right down the primrose path. So when we recognize this, and keeping with my two guys against AI, it's the ability to influence reactive logic. We had talked a while ago about Moltbook. I thought this was a great situation. It's kind of died off since Meta bought it, and maybe that's because it's being employed. But so if you have reactive entities and you put a bunch of reactive entities in the same framework, what happens when they start to react off of each other's input? It really, when you think about it, it's mind-boggling, because now all of a sudden theories based on reactions from whatever programming an individual machine got, it did pathways to expound upon something that now another reactive device will respond to.
What's clear is it can't replace common sense.
Exactly. There's no analytical capability in terms of what's the value of what's being sent to it, which is the basis of this whole fiasco here with the vending machine. Is, does the machine have the ability, at least at this point, to be able to determine whether or not the data that's being provided to it is responsible, well-intended, or comical? In this case here, I think...
Well, here's where we are, and we look at some of our episodes. Look, here's the problem with AI. It can't differentiate between what's a good idea and what's a bad idea. It's just an idea. And what do I mean by that? Yeah, tell me how to make a bioterroristic weapon.
Right.
Okay. It's a...
Right. Each question is taken on its face value.
It's a dope.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, this is a dummy in a lot of ways. And this gives me some hope here. Because as this becomes more and more apparent, and you're starting to see this somewhat in some of our corporations, CEOs are pulling back and going, yeah, it's really not replacing human beings at this point. And I don't think the LLM can. I've always said that's the wrong model. I like the part where we go back and it has to have a worldview. It has to experience the world. And if you're going to create true and artificial intelligence, it can't be just a reader. And we've known these people. We knew these people in school. Remember the kid who they read everything, but they never went outside?
Right.
Like there was something wrong with them, right?
Yeah, they're very introverted.
Remember the poor kid who they made skip a whole bunch of grades? They never really socially adjusted. It was tough. This thing is like one of those kids. It's not normal. What this thing is in the end is it's going to pick its nose and eat it and eat paste. That's what this thing is.
But to just go one step further with this, because I think that we're going to watch technology. We're already talking about cars that are going to be able to determine whether you're impaired. They're going to look at your eyes. They're going to try to read facial expressions. But that's reducing it down to a series of algorithms. there's still no spider sense, for lack of a better way to put it. But those discernible characteristics that we as humans have to be able to tell, hey, you're pulling a wool over my eyes, you could laugh about it or get mad about it. The machine is still dealing with everything on a face value, just like you said. It takes a question, it analyzes it as for the data that's there without making a value judgment that's tied fast with it. The thing for us to be afraid of is that maybe being well-intended, as the designers say, we need to give it some kind of insight that's going to end up being an algorithmic process that makes it a one-size-fits-all based upon, your look right now means this, or your look right now means this. This means you're impaired. I mean, we're already looking at the ability for them to be able to turn the ignition off on a car based upon how the driver appears in an image, and finding out that it's not necessarily fail-safe. And if it determines that you're impaired as you're going down the middle of the road, what is it going to do? Turn the car off? And these are all big questions. It's just like the smart gun. I had 15 years ago, New Jersey passed smart gun legislation. It doesn't even exist. Smart guns don't exist. But they passed a law that said that when it does come out, it's going to be applicable in New Jersey. And the idea was that it was supposed to be able to tell from your hand as to whether or not you were the owner. Weren't the owner. Yeah. Well, they found that it doesn't work, and then they also found out that for law enforcement, that when it doesn't work, that's somewhat embarrassing at times, not to mention potentially deadly. So when we start to delegate all of this, to entities that no longer have the ability to make common sense decisions, that's how we end up with Claude's vending machine here.
Well, yeah, because we're going to replace a regular person who knows how to put a bag of chips in there with a machine that can't figure out that it's not going to put a PlayStation and some dead fish in there.
Well, because it's within genre. And I think that it's fair to say that technology is going to continue to improve. But while we go through that interim point, and here we go back to agency again. As we give up more and more of our agency to the machines, we're going to see more and more examples of nonsense like this, where while it's learning, it can make some really big bumps. And I really think, we look at Anthropic, just went through a bump with the Department of Defense because it didn't want to, use AI for weapons systems. These are life and death decisions that are being made here.
Well, I mean, that's my point. That's where I am. Always with this, when I'm going to take it seriously, is like the technology is not where we think it is. Just because we got some right answers on some questions. And this is why I think the human remains in the loop. I don't think we don't have a model right now for me that takes humans out. And here's why. I'm not giving my retirement funds to this thing because I can't hold it accountable.
Right.
That's true. I'm not giving my medical decisions to this thing because I cannot hold it accountable. I might want my doctor to plug my x-rays or my results in and have it analyzed, but I want that human to take that data that kicks out and think it through. Because that human mind, to me, is still smarter than this. Because that human mind has discernment. That human mind has empathy. That human mind has compassion. Well, maybe not all docs, but that human mind has malpractices that it's going to have to answer for.
And let's
it's going to slow everything down.
It is. And here's another thing too, and as we've touched on the financial components of this before, and that's like with the idea of central bank digital currencies or whatever the digital form is that no longer allows for the direct transaction by use of cash, is now there's another party that's involved in making the decisions. I mean, already you're looking at if you use eBay, for instance, there's certain things you can't sell on eBay. That's part of the user agreement. They're making a value judgment as to whether or not such and such a thing is appropriate. And that was done, and it was determined undoubtedly by a board of directors, and that's fine. What happens when those day-to-day decisions, in the event of a centralized monetary distribution system that now becomes subjective to where you no longer have the right to make your own decisions?
I know it's headed there, but I don't think we're as close as maybe we think some days. And here's why. You know what this article tells me about this thing? It's a pencil. It's just a pencil. And I've said this about, or a good friend of mine taught me this a long time ago. All a computer program is, in the end of the day, is a fancy pencil. Everything it can do, I can do with a pencil. All right, I might not be as fast. I might not be able to generate as much information as fast. But for God's sake, I won't get bullied into bankruptcy as a human running the vending machine. I'm not going to, I know enough to know what I'm being screwed with.
Well, and what difference did it make?
What I'm saying is, all this ever should be is a pencil. It is a tool in my toolbox. Yes. Can AI help me as a thinking, discerning human being be a better employee? Yes. Can I learn how to prompt the right questions? Yes. But a lot of times this AI is wrong. It's malicious. It's a fool. It isn't what we think it is. It is not ultimately going to replace us all. What it is going to do is cause a lot of disruption that we have not factored in. And it can cause mass destruction if we put it into these systems, weaponize it, allow it information for building bioterror weapons. But those are foolish human decisions. It's a tool. That is all it is. It's a fancy ass pencil.
And let's bring back accountability. And while we look at everything in terms of the lawyer's world, where I'm going to sue you. Claude lost $1,000 here. Does that matter to Claude? No. Does it matter to much anybody in this case? Probably no. If it was my money, I probably would be upset about it. But the fact of the matter is that Claude's decisions to buy PlayStations and fish at the end didn't matter because the $1,000 didn't mean anything to Claude anyway.
That's what I mean by discernment. It's not real to that thing.
So when we even look at it in terms of that's profound, actually, your discernment. I like that. Profound. That is discernment. It doesn't matter to the AI whether or not you have access to your funds or not. It doesn't matter to the AI. It's worse than a bureaucracy.
It is. It should be used as a tool. It should not be given this idea of it's going to be autonomous and it's going to replace us.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people who want us to believe that because if we surrender to that, the people who are in on the joke, oh boy, they just got a real.
Yeah, except for one thing, I'm going to remind people. There are others out there that aren't as visible. They're not tech bros. But by God, we lived on the streets, and we can outsmart the best of them.
Oh, I think you're looking even if they were able to put in a CBDC economy, there's going to be a black market instantly.
Yes.
People are going to find something that they want, whether it's widgets or wampum or gold and silver or whatever the case may be. There will be something. They're going to try to monitor it, but.
Put this into your business, and you're going to meet some real criminals.
There you go. And probably
some real pranksters. That's what I'm going to call them, for lack of a better term.
There you go. I like that. That's good. But discernment, I like that. That was good. Well,
it doesn't have it.
It's true.
It's not that smart. It's smart like a book nerd.
So we're giving up our agency to somebody who doesn't care.
Frankly, you're giving up your agency to somebody, and I wasn't a perfect kid, that I probably would have put on a locker at lunch for my own amusement when I wasn't as nice as I am now. Yeah, give it to it. Look, I used to say it's clear if you watch enough of these that I'm against communism. But here's a real secret. And I always love the socialists because they're always like, well, everything will be equal. But let me explain something to you. You put me in a capitalist society, I'm going to be a great capitalist. You put me in a communist society, I will be a member of the Politburo. All right? I will find a way to gain whatever system you put in front of me. And there are more people like me than people want to admit. And I don't mean that in an evil way. Tell me the rules. I'll work within the rules. But you make the rules so I can't succeed. I'm one of these Gen Zers we talked about in a previous episode.
You will succeed. Survival is a powerful thing.
I make it so all I can be is a criminal, and you'll have one of the best criminals you've ever seen.
Well, and when it reaches critical mass, and I think that's probably what Gen Z is starting to recognize. In my case, I could sit there and I could say, hey, well, a few years I'm going to croak anyway, so it doesn't matter.
That I am thankful for. Not yours, mine.
But I can look at it and say, and this is us doing this podcast. This is one of my efforts to show that I do want to try to still do something about it. But that changes because maybe it only affected 10% of my generation, and then you get to your generation and it's 30%, and then you get to the millennials and it's 40%. And now Gen Z is looking at this. They're past critical mass. More than 50% of them
definitely
are going to have to address this. How long is it going to be before they're going to look at this and say, hey, you know what? This is not. You want to talk about democracy, you cannot tell a generation more than half of them have no hope moving forward without having something significant take place.
And I think that's why I have hope in that generation.
Well, there you go.
And I will say this. Remember this, if you're really stuck, you just got to think like old Scarlett O'Hara. I don't care if I got to lie, cheat, steal, or kill. I will never go hungry again.
But more important than that, please subscribe. Please give us a like. And this one was actually fun.
We'll see you. AI's going to lose.